When a rat sees a cat and smile, there is a hole somewhere. Think about it. You are on Niger Education TV and you're watching the nationwide 2024 e-debate, and this remains the quarterfinal, the last round for the quarterfinals. And I'm sure our intellectuals are ready to fire on all four cylinders for this round. Moving forward, I would like to appreciate the participants, the judges, adjudicators, and everyone who has made this possible, and also to our viewers. Without further ado, let me make welcome the moderator for this debate, Emeka Deborah, to come anchor the debate.
For the last round of the quarterfinals, the motion, should the parents of the Nigerian education system be held accountable for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages, will be argued by OYO and Cross River states. On my right-hand side is team proposition, with the lead speaker being Omotayo Emmanuel, the chief supporting speaker being Badegeshin Daniela, and the second supporting speaker being Oladepo Olamiposi. And on my right-hand side is team opposition, Cross River State, with the lead speaker being Hogan Favor Daniel, the chief supporting speaker being Robert Jose Joshua, and the second supporting speaker being Mbora Quinette Etta. With this, it's my delight to call on the chief supporting speaker of side proposition to open the case of the argument.
Good evening, honorable members of this gathering. Standing before you is Omotayo Emmanuel, proudly representing Oyo State, the pace-setting state. Today, I stand before you to speak in favor of a very controversial question. Should parents or the Nigerian educational system be held accountable for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages? Languages are more than just a means of communication. They are the carriers of culture, identity, and our history as a people. However, as we speak today, Nigeria's over 500 languages are under a serious threat of extinction. That means they are about to vanish. And this crisis calls for immediate attention. Why I argue today that both parents and the Nigerian educational system have responsibilities in this challenge, we place a particular focus on the roles of parents in this crucial crisis. As team proposition, we'll be considering 4 key arguments. The factors responsible for the threatening extinction of Nigerian language, how the Nigerian educational system has worked towards preservation of these languages, why we believe that parents are to be held accountable for the threatening extinction of this language and the result of their action, and what parents can do to check the threatening extinction of these languages. As the lead speaker for team proposition, I will be the one to tell you the factors responsible for the threatening extinction of this language, as well as how the Nigerian educational system has worked towards preserving these languages. My first supporting speaker here will be expatiating on why we believe that parents are to be held accountable for the threatening extinction of these languages and the effect of their action. While my second supporting speaker here will be shedding more light on what parents can do to check the threatening extinction of these languages. Without further ado, let me delve into my first major argument: factors responsible for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages. We have the globalization and English dominance. One of the leading factors contributing to the decline of Nigerian education, Nigerian language, is dominance and the globalization of English. In today's interconnected world, English is seen as the lingua franca. English is seen as the language of opportunity, of progress, and of global engagement. And as a result of this, parents who want their parents to succeed in today's world, they increasingly prioritize this English over their native languages. A 2018 UNESCO report shows it that over 70% of Nigerian language are under a serious threat of extinction. Chinua Achebe once said, and I quote, "The English language does not have the ability to carry the African experiences. Only our language can do that." But when we fail to pass down this language from generation to generation, we make our language lose its ability to carry our culture, our identity, and our history as a people. We have the role of technology and media. In a digital age today, media and social media cannot be overemphasized as they play a crucial role in shaping the experience of a child. Unfortunately, most of the content consumed by children today, they be in English, giving little or no space for these Nigerian languages. A study conducted by NERDC found out that over 90% of content consumed by Nigerian youth are in English. The consuming of this foreign language has led to the erosion of local languages. We also have the decline of multi-generational language transmission. In past generations, children learn their language from their parents through direct interaction with the parents and their grandparents. However, this tradition is slowly fading away. Urbanization has caused a breakdown in the multi-generational transmission of languages. A 2020 study carried out by the Linguistic Society of Nigeria proves it that over 70% of children in Nigeria today, when they get to adulthood, they no longer speak their languages because their parents have refused to teach them their mother tongue. And finally, I have economic and social stigma. In many parts of Nigeria today, indigenous languages are seen as inferior. They are seen as irrelevant. And because of this, parents are worried that if their children speaking these negative languages will not give them the ability to compete in an increasingly globalized world. And this creates a vicious society where children, through their growing, they get disconnected from their linguistic and their cultural heritage. Wole Soyinka once said, and I quote, "When a language dies, the loss is not just for those who speak the language, but for the whole world." End of quote. In cities like Lagos, wealthy parents often discourage their children from speaking indigenous languages. They associate these languages with backwardness and poverty, and this belief is causing a threatening extinction of Nigerian language. Let me delve into my second major argument: what the Nigerian educational system has done to preserve these languages. I know team opposition may come here and tell us that Nigerian educational system has done this to threaten the extinction of the Nigerian language. But I'm here to tell you ways by which Nigerian educational system, what Nigerian educational system has put in place to preserve the extinction of these languages. We have the National Policy on Education. The National Policy on Education formally recognizes indigenous languages, and it mandates that indigenous languages be taught in schooling from the early stage to the adult stage to foster cultural preservation. We also have language teaching in schools. In states like OYO, Lagos, Kano, Kaduna, languages like Yoruba and Hausa have been made compulsory subjects in the school. And over 50% of Nigerian schools today have inculcated indigenous languages into their curriculum. And this is providing children with the opportunity to learn about their linguistic and their cultural source. We have linguistic search and documentation. Institutes like the National Linguistic Association in Nigeria today, they have started documenting these extinctable languages. Even though the language is no longer spoken widely, they have started documenting them to ensure that it is not lost.
You made mention saying that language like Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa are made compulsory. Now, are you saying that the other languages that are not being made compulsory, are you saying that they are irrelevant?
I said languages like Yoruba. We have over 500 languages in Nigeria. Do you expect me to mention all the languages?
No.
I think I've answered your question. The fact that Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa have been inculcated doesn't mean other languages also have not been inculcated into the curriculum. I think I've addressed your question. Now we have community and cultural programs. In our state, His Excellency Governor Oluseyi Makinde has made it compulsory that the Oyo State Anthem be sung on the assembly every day, which is in the Yoruba language. This is it is rekindling the interest of students in their cultural heritage. It is bringing about the reconnection with our linguistic roots. In conclusion, it baffles me when I see us fast throwing away gold for silver, reality for unreality, certainty for uncertainty, and our rich cultural heritage for borrowed heritage. But still, like dust, we can rise. Like Maya Angelou quoted in her poem, "Still I rise." Our parents have to trash the fake life that they have given to us to the originality of our cultural heritage. The future of Nigerian language lies in my hands. lies in your hands, lies in our hands. And with this, I am proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the lead speaker of side proposition. It is my delight to call on the lead speaker of side opposition to open the case of the argument.
Nigeria gained her independence 1st October 1960. But I'm afraid to say that Nigeria is still dependent on English language as a means of communication. We are still slaves under the colonial masters. Good evening, the adjudicators and the audience. Standing on the existing order of protocol, I am the lead speaker presenting Team Cross River, here to strongly negate the motion which states that should parents or the Nigerian educational system be held accountable for the threatened extinction of our indigenous languages, with the following points of mind to back up my view. I and my team will be discussing on some very vital points to back up our arguments. I, as the lead speaker, will be discussing on some basic points, showing you reasons why the educational system should be held accountable for the threatened extinction of our Nigerian language, while my chief supporting speaker will be discussing on some points to further our arguments. And my second supporting speaker will be discussing on the consequences and solutions when we do not speak our indigenous languages. But before I proceed, let me start by defining terms. Educational system. This can be defined as an institution, process, or resources that provides learning opportunities to individuals to acquire knowledge, skills, and values. It encompasses various sectors, levels, structures, and methodologies that provides learning for individuals from the early childhood to adulthood. Extinction, this simply means taken out of existence. Languages, this can be defined as a complex symbolic system used for communication. In the past decades, Nigeria has made great efforts to enroll students into schools. These achievements, however, have brought to the fore the silent crisis and revelations that schools do not equate to learning. Imagine how frustrating it would be sitting in a classroom every day and not learning. Most of them come from the rural areas, and when they come to secondary school here in the urban areas, they do not understand what the teacher is saying, so they tend to get lost. They are confused. They are not able to assimilate what the teacher is saying. They are not able to read comprehension text and answer simple arithmetic equations. The first language plays a very critical role in a man's life. The man uses this language to interpret whatever comes to him in life. According to the 2022 survey made by the National Language of Statistics, NBS, made by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, and UNICEF, unfortunately, there is a limited chance to catch up later. This is really a contributing factor because it leads to high rate of dropout of children progressing from schools and social alliances. More so, for these indigenous languages, for further education and quality education cannot and would never be overemphasized. Like I said earlier, I will be discussing on some vital points, showing reasons why the Nigerian educational system should be held accountable for the threatened extinction of Nigerian languages. These include 1, lack of official recognition. Nigeria is forced to recognize 3 major languages, the Wazobia, that is the Igbo, the Hausa, and Yoruba. And the educational system recognizes only these 3 major languages out of over 540 languages spoken in the country. Limited educational research. Educational research on this national educational system are very scarce. Now, most educational systems do not encourage the importance of textbooks on these languages. Even the few schools that claim to teach this language do not attach importance to it. They only do so just to fulfill all righteousness. Can't you clearly see that value is not based on unjust language? I'll get back to you. Inadequate language policies. This refers to the absence of official guidelines, rules and regulations governing the use and development of our languages. This void can lead to limited educational instruction and documentation. Cultural and social disparities. It can also lead to language, etc. to mention but a few. 4, having politicians and other government officials fluent in the language they speak publicly. Taking for instance in Ghana, the government officials use the vernacular to address the masses. But here in Nigeria, Even the politicians and even the local language chairman use English when addressing the masses. How then do you expect this language to be promoted? How then do you expect our cultural heritage to be preserved? Coming down to the schools here in Nigeria, students are not allowed to speak their indigenous languages. Even with the full knowledge that students spend about 4 to 6 hours in school, at least 2 hours can be used at this period of time to be able to teach these languages. For instance, in Cross River State, the languages spoken are closely related. The Ijaw, the Efuk, the Ibibio, they are all closely related. So at least a teacher can speak, even if it's 2 or 3 languages in the schools around the state, to promote the language and our cultural heritage preserved. Funny broadcasts in the language. Back there in those days, the news were read in our indigenous languages, such as news in Ejagam, news in Bekora, and the rest of them. But today, how many broadcasting stations are reading the news in our indigenous languages? I leave that to my opponent to answer. May I have it, please?
Okay, now you said we have around 440 languages across Nigeria.
Yes.
And you said if all these languages are inculcated into the curriculum,
Sorry,
how
that's
do
not
you
what I said.
expect?
I didn't mention that.
You said we only recognize 3 languages, and you said we have for 540. Now, do you expect the educational system to inculcate this over 540 into the educational system? How do you expect an average Nigerian student to grab the over 540 languages that we have? And you also said,
taking for instance, in Cross River State, we have the language that are closely related. Now, a teacher can even take, even if it's just 2 languages or 3 languages. For example, we have the Ibibio, the Ijaw, the Efuk, they are all closely related. So I can teach about 2 or 3 languages. At least the language is promoted and our cultural heritage preserved. Now imagine, furthermore, the foreign language is celebrated on the February 21st. Now this day recognizes the language and the languages to be promoted. Now, are you aware that in the year 2022, are you aware that in the year 2022, the Federal Ministry of Education, FME, through the NED, Nigeria Educational Research and Development Council, made a giant stride to approve of the Nigerian language policy, which states that language instruction should be made in our mother tongue or language of in community, in instruction community, LIC, from the ECCDE, which is Early Child Care Development Education. Are you also aware that about 20% of our languages are going extinct? Taking for instance a topical example like the Ubang or also known as the New Jerusalem in Obudu, Cross River State, which are blessed with a wonder that is beyond human understanding. Now, are you aware that in this place the women speak a different language called the Aresake, the men speak a different language called the Ofe? Now, because there is no proper language presentation strategies, the children prefer to be gradually using these languages, prefer to use English language, the language used in schools to teach students. Now, in conclusion, children, are you also aware that there are some countries, taking for instance the America that use their indigenous language despite the fact that they have been colonized? Are you aware? For instance, in America, we have the Peru, we have the Bovila, we have the Hawaii. All these countries use their indigenous language despite the fact that they have been colonized. In conclusion, children should be educated using their indigenous language to build a solid foundation on their native dialect. It also helps, it is also important in the oral cognitive development of children. This means that the mind of children is like a blackboard in which whatever the first contact they see is what they tend to copy. My opponent may say that our parents are not the first contact. Now I am here to say that yes, they are. I'm not disputing that fact. But are you aware that the children are greatly influenced by their peers and society in which the family lives in? Thank you for accepting this simple truth. This motion should stand.
That was great. Bravo to you, the lead speaker of side opposition. Permit me to invite the supporting speaker of side proposition to commence the argument.
The chief speaker from the team opposition came here and told us that there are not adequate government policies implemented to ensure the inculcation of the indigenous languages in our schools. It seems as if you were not listening when my chief speaker was talking. He talked about the national policy on education, which fosters inclusion of the major indigenous languages we have in Nigeria. And if there is no full implementation of that policy, there is
at least partial implementation of that policies. If parents want to ensure the growth of the indigenous languages, why then don't they take their children to those schools that they are inculcating the use of indigenous languages in their school? And you also said something about students spending more hours in school. An average student spends only 8 hours at school, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. He spends twice that amount of hours at home. Are you then trying to tell me that the Nigerian educational system should be blamed for the laxity on the hands of parents? According to UNESCO in 2019, a staggering 29% of Nigerian languages are classified as vulnerable, while another 12% of Nigerian languages are classified as being definitely endangered. These alarming statistics paint a critical picture as the diversity eroding, as the erosion of danger adversity linguistic further jeopardizes the foundation of our cultural identity. Standing before you today is Gbadegesi Daniela from the team OYO, here to propose the motion at hand. As my chief speaker has said, I will be giving us the reasons why parents should be held accountable for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages and the effects. But before I go on, I'd like to reiterate what my chief speaker has said. My chief speaker has been able to prove to us the factors responsible for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages and also the measures that have been put in place by the Nigerian educational system to ensure the promotion and conservation of these indigenous languages. Now to my major argument. We, the team proposition, believe that parents need to be held accountable for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages, and I will be expanding more on this through the following points. First, the abnormal embrace of modernization and globalization. According to UNESCO in 2022, 45% of Nigerian languages are spoken by fewer than 10,000 people each, and many of the local languages are relegated to the rural areas, with the urban areas gravitating towards English. There's a language shift in which the people in the urban areas, through their intellectual and globalized space, migrate and speak only the dominant languages like French and English, which are considered much more socially and economically advantageous. Parents no longer speak the indigenous language at home. They no longer tell their children folklore, folk tales, or even train them the native languages. And we are here blaming the Nigerian educational system for the laxity in the hands of parents. Also, parents are bowing to social pressure. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala once said, in Nigeria, speaking English fluently is often equated with success, creating a social pressure that forces the younger generation to abandon their own language. This disconnect is not linguistic, it is cultural. Due to the societal pressures faced by the parents in the society, and in order to redeem themselves, they try to fit into the norms in the society. Parents prioritize the English language proficiency, viewing it as an upward mobility, or in most cases, a means of expanding their gaps as classes or expanding their paths as elites, which further declines the use of indigenous languages in the community. Honorable panelists, have you ever seen an European naming his children Abike, Chioma, Danladi, where we, in our absent-mindedness illiteracy, name our children Anthony, Joyce, Bianca, Evans, when we're supposed to be consuming and cherishing the values and traditional heritage that our forefathers have left for us? Olufunmilayo Ransom Kuti, may the Lord rest her gentle soul, was not formerly known by that name. She was formerly known as Frances Olufunmilayo Thomas, but when she went to England, she took up the full usage of her middle name, Olufunmilayo. Now the renowned female activist is known for that name all around the world, and we are here chasing and adopting a cultural heritage that is not even ours. Moreover, parents tend to engage themselves in cultural shifts. Jidenna, an American rapper and singer, once said, I am, always have been, and always will be proud of my Nigerian heritage. People often tend to reduce the low and frequent usage of the indigenous languages, which cause children to disconnect from the cultural heritage. Honorable panelists, who are we fooling? Who are we trying to imitate? An American rapper and singer still paying obeisance to his roots as a Nigerian, and we are trying to adopt a culture that is not even ours. Have you ever seen Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala in anything aside from a traditional attire? Who then are we trying to fool? Your POI, please.
You talked about globalization and organization. How is that centered to the parents?
How is that centered to the parents? Is it not the parents that move from a place to another? When parents migrate, especially to urban areas and foreign areas, they tend to inculcate the dominant languages spoken there, which tend to affect how the children can fluently communicate in the indigenous languages. Take an example, the Nigerian communities in the U.S. A Nigerian child in the U.S., despite being raised in a Nigerian household, is unable to speak fluently in either Igbo, Yoruba, or Hausa. Why? Because he is predominantly conversing with English-speaking pets on a daily basis. I think I've answered your question. These languages going to extinct pose a huge concern, and if not properly and properly addressed, could pose irrevocable consequences, which include, First, weaken community ties. The language is not just a means of communication, it is a thread that binds communities together. When a language fades away or is abandoned, then the social fabric in the community weakens, leading to a breakdown in interpersonal relationship. And as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said, the language is more than just a means of communication. It is a carrier of a community's worldview. If we lose our language, we not only lose the words, but the very essence of who we are. Also, there is impaired cognitive development. A research carried out by Cranford in 2003 and Doria in 1998 states that language loss can lead to loss of cultural identity, which further affects cognitive development. Children who are brought up in multilingual environments tend to have cognitive flexibility, as language is a fundamental tool in improving the brain, as it shapes thinking, memory, and learning. However, when a child only learns to speak one language, he tends to be at a losing gain of all these cognitive benefits. And as the Yoruba proverb says, "Aki fi egun shaimo," which means when a native language is lost, then the cognitive depth he has will also be lost. Moreover, we have disconnection from the cultural heritage. A 2021 research from the Nigerian National Commission of Monuments and Museums states that over 300 of Nigerian languages are critically endangered. The older generation can no longer pass on their values, their cultures, their traditions, which they upheld to the younger generations because of a language barrier. As I conclude my speech, I would like to allude to the scriptures. In the book of Judges, there was war between the Gileadites and the Ephraimites. The leader of the army of the Gileadites, who was known as Jephthah, always stood at the border of the city. Then he would ask you, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If you said no, you will be asked to pronounce the word shibboleth. And if you pronounce it as sibboleth, you will be immediately executed. Honorable panelists, imagine if you were part of Gileadites by descent and your children could not pronounce the word shibboleth and they were slaughtered and executed before your eyes. How would you feel? The Ephraimites, in a bid to outrun death, ran themselves into the cold hands of death. Chinua Achebe eloquently said, "Language is a means of survival. When you lose your language, you lose the opportunity to communicate." Language is not just a means of communication, it is a thread that binds us all together. The responsibility to uphold and cherish our indigenous language falls on all of us, especially the parents. Let us all ensure that future generations are able to create, preserve, and uphold the linguistic treasures that binds us. Without our language, we lose our identity. Without our language, we have no identity. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you so much, the Chief Supporting Speaker of Side Proposition. I'll proceed by calling the Chief Supporting Speaker of Side Opposition to commence the argument.
A critical issue, language extinction. Our language is our culture. Standing before is Robert Joy Joshua, the Chief Supporting Speaker of the negating team, here to further the case of our argument. Before I begin, I heard my opponent talk about the things the Nigerian educational system have put in place to preserve the threatening extinction of our indigenous language. You are indirectly supporting us because we are speaking on the Nigerian educational system and what they have put in place to preserve the threatening extinction of our indigenous languages. Like my first speaker said, I'll be elaborating on some points to show you that the Nigerian educational system should be held accountable for the threatening extinction of our indigenous languages. Medium of instruction, leading to the neglect of our mother tongue. The predominant use of English language, a lingua franca, as a medium of instruction in schools, lead to the marginalization of our indigenous languages, thereby leading to the reduction of this indigenous language in the use of formal education. The curriculum focus. Educational curricula often prioritizes English languages over our local languages, thereby creating a lack of incentives for students to learn and value their indigenous languages. Globalization. A focus on this globalization and modernization makes the educational system to adopt foreign languages such as French, English, and Spanish in our educational system, further marginalizing our educational system. Who will you blame if parents who have laid enabling foundations, enabling environment, and solid foundation for students to learn the indigenous language, and when they are sent to schools, they become discouraged? Why? Because they don't see these indigenous languages in the school curriculum. Who would you blame? Of course, the Nigerian educational system. Sociolinguistic factors. The education reinforces social stigma against indigenous languages, making us to be ashamed of our culture, our identity. Inadequate funding. This is the insufficient financial resources provided for the learning, teaching, and promotion of indigenous languages in Nigeria. The educational system do not give sufficient funds for
POI
indigenous
speaker.
language education. I'll get back to you. Language, precisely our native language, depicts our culture. It helps us to express ourselves more better. We dance to native songs by listening to these native songs and not in English language. Take, for example, the Cross River states that feature the Ekpe dance in most of their cultural ceremonies. The Ekpe dancers cannot dance to an English tune, but beat the drum and sing the song in their dialect. You will see them dancing to your tune. May I get your POI, please?
Now, you said that we were indirectly supporting you in your argument. We are saying that the parents and not the Nigerian educational system is to be blamed for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages. And you are supposed to be saying that the Nigerian educational system is to be blamed. How then are we supporting you in your
Yes,
argument?
you are indirectly supporting me because the Nigerian educational system are to be blamed. And at the end, my second supporting speaker is going to be bringing consequences as well as the solutions that this Nigerian educational system has put in place to bring up to stop the threatening extinction of our indigenous
So
society.
you know that the Nigerian educational systems have put some policies in place. So why then are you saying that the Nigerian educational system is to be blamed?
Well, there are some examples of languages that have gone into extinction, some of which include the Ajawa language in the Bauchi state, the Niger language, the Gamo Nipoi language in the Niger state, colonial legacy, the pre-colonial educational system. In the pre-colonial educational system perpetuates foreign dominance. Yes, our colonial masters came. They brought about education. They imposed their foreign languages on us, the English language. Agencies such as the National Institute for Cultural Orientation as well as the UNESCO Language Preservation Program have worked so hard to see to it that our indigenous languages do not go into extinction. Yet, still with these agencies, our language is going into extinction. A tree, of course, cannot make a forest. If these agencies stand alone to guard against the extinction of our indigenous languages without the help of the Nigerian educational system, how do you think they will reach a significant level of achievement, enabling us to affirm our identities, maintain critical ties to our culture, preserve our social backing, as well as maintain important connections to older generations? Documentation of languages. Apart from the Wazobia, how many of our indigenous languages have been documented? Panel, should we not incorporate Nigerian languages into practice and prevent it from going extinct? The educational feat should not be measured using the English language, but rather the intellectual feat. Why is English language made a criteria for passing? Why is it used as a standard for measuring literacy? The connection between language and education in education is very visible and paramount. Yes, language plays a vital role in education. Most children start schools with the knowledge of concepts in their mother tongue, and then they are unable to relate with this same concept when they get to schools. Why do I say so? Because they become unfamiliar with the language of the classroom. Education, it is estimated that less than 30% of Nigerian population can be reached using the English language. But this is not surprising because Nigeria has over 440 languages across its borders. The importance of the mother language in foundational learning, inclusion, and qualitative education cannot be overemphasized. Education in my mother tongue have helped children to develop a solid foundation to their native languages, thereby enabling them to express themselves, ask questions, and promote important discussions with teachers and their peers. Encouraging the use of the mother tongue, of our mother tongue does not neglect the importance of this indigenous language to connecting the global community. Nigeria can learn from India in this example, who carry along their indigenous language alongside the English language, and not just dropping their indigenous language and carrying the English language. How can we accelerate the FLN, the foundational literacy and numeracy, and eliminate the roots of learning crisis in indigenous languages? One way to tie this issue is by ensuring that children acquire the foundational learning, the foundational literacy and numeracy, the FNL skills in their primary 4 and primary 5, enabling them to be able to be on the path to continuous learning, which is in line with the aspiration of the Universal Basic Education Commission, the UBEC. Of course, statistics have shown that 60% of children now tell their parents not to speak vernacular with them. Because of the Wazobia, our languages are now going into
POI
extinction.
speaker.
I'll get back to you. countries where indigenous languages continue to strive despite colonization, so in Africa, such as Ethiopia, Ghana, Burundi, and Swaziland. My opponent, did you hear me mentioning Nigeria? Why won't our indigenous language go into extinction when the Nigerian educational system have not done their best in preserving our educational system after colonization? May I get to
Now
you
you
right
said
please?
children will be telling their parents not to speak vernacular to them. Tell me, is it the parent who has the authority or the child? Is it the child that will tell the parent what to do, or is the parent that will tell the child what to do? Prove that to the house.
Well, with the help of the Nigerian educational economy, educators, and policymakers, we are able to preserve Nigerian linguistics heritage. The panel, this house, believes that the Nigerian educational system should be held accountable for the threatened extinction of our indigenous languages. I rest my case.
Kudos to you, the chief supporting speaker of side opposition. I'll be so glad to call on the second supporting speaker of side proposition to conclude the argument.
The team opposition came here and continued to claim that the Nigerian educational system had to be held accountable for the extinction of Nigerian languages. The first supporting speaker for the team opposition also came here to tell us about the expert singers. How they reached this conclusion still remains a mystery to me. Charity, they say, begins at home, but there is a problem when we begin to feel that charity starts at school. Definitely, you can't learn the expert dance from school. Your parents definitely have to teach you. But if they do not teach you, how then are you meant to carry on the legacy of your family, of your nation, and of your tribe as a whole? Once upon a time, an egret once lost his way and found itself amidst chicks. The mother then took it upon herself to cater and care for this egret. Then a day, the mother eagle came flying high in the sky, then saw the egret among the chicks. Then it cried out to the chick, telling it to fly. The egret tried to fly but could not fly. The mother eagle, dejected, went back home and came back the following day, crying to the egret again to fly. The egret failed to fly. The egret had to fly, wanted to fly, but could not fly, as it had been tamed for years. Then the mother eagle went back home again and came back the following day. The third day, the mother eagle came back to the egret and cried, "Your place is up there, to fly side by side amongst other eagles, and not to scratch the floor with the cheeks." With this, the egret was able to fly, and it continued to fly higher and higher and higher until it was high above the ground. Looking at this story, sometimes I see it and I wonder, can Nigeria ever fly again? Our own mother eagle has been calling out to us to fly, but we do not understand the language. How then are we to blame the inadequacies of parents on the Nigerian educational system? Standing before you this evening is Dr. Palam Kwesi representing your state. As the team proposition, we are here to tell you that parents are to be blamed and are to be held accountable for the extinction of Nigerian languages. My first supporting speaker here has been able to tell us the reason why parents are responsible and also the effect of the actions of parents. And I, as the second supporting speaker, will be telling us the things that parents can do to check the extinction of languages. To begin with, the implementation of language educational programs. The Nigerian National Policy on Education highlights that everyone that speaks his mother tongue first encourages and fosters cognitive development. And this enables children to be able to learn faster and easier other languages. Parents are to collaborate with teachers. They are to serve as advocates for the inclusion of history and culture in a language. These programs include the National Institute for Nigerian Languages program and the language immersion programs. Additionally, parents are to enhance adequate parent-child language learning activities. Parents can create a bilingual home setting in the home where they ensure that the children speak the vernacular and also speak their indigenous languages more than other languages such as English or French. A study by the National Commission for Colleges of Education in 2023 revealed that only about 30% of students in colleges are proficient in their language, and this is due to the exposure to storytelling. This implements that parents can adopt the method of storytelling, song singing, and also the telling of folktales to children, so as to ensure that they get well the rhyme, rhythm, intonation of their languages. Additionally, parents should hold the language in high esteem. An ancient African proverb goes thus: "Until the lion learns to ride, the hunter will continue to take the credit." This implements This implements the need to preserve our cultural heritage. Professor Akinwumi Ishola, a renowned Nigerian linguist, said, parents are the first and most important teachers in a child's life, especially in the areas of culture, tradition, and language learning. If parents speak the language with pride, if parents uphold pride in speaking the language, then the children will definitely follow suit. But what do we have in the Nigeria of today? Parents refuse to speak their indigenous languages to children. They refuse to enroll the children in schools that speak the indigenous languages. How then are we to blame the inadequacies of these parents on the school educational system? Also, parents should show children the beauty and importance of the language. Nigeria as a country is home to over 500 languages, and our languages are deeply intertwined with our culture, traditions, and rituals pertaining to different ethnic groups. The most direct and powerful way to preserve our culture is by including our language, our indigenous language, in our day-to-day conversation with people. The day we lose our language is the day we lose our footing. The day we forget a language is the day we forget our source and where we come from. As the saying goes, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
POI
Finally,
speaker.
your POI.
Okay, you said that the parents are.
Please make it snappy.
You said that the parents are to be blamed because they have refused to send their children to schools that promote this language. But the
Yes.
schools promote the 3 languages. What if the child is not from those 3 tribes? So what is the child going to do?
Definitely, schools that are located in places where they speak Idoma will definitely have a teacher that teaches Idoma. Schools that are located in places that speak Hausa language will definitely have schools that speak Hausa languages. The ethnic religion, we cannot just classify the ethnic, the Idoma, alongside the Igbo. They will surely have schools that speak. So definitely, as a parent, it is your duty to look for such a school and enroll your child in them. Moving on to my point, finally, the adaptation of the Bloom's taxonomy in the language acquisition. And this involves remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. In this, children have to understand well the language and also apply well the understanding that is required from the parents. Parents must take responsibility for the survival and the preservation of Nigerian languages. If our indigenous languages does not thrive within the house, how then is it supposed to thrive in a wider community? Parents have to teach their children how to speak. But if they refuse to speak the indigenous languages to them, how then do we expect them to know it? How then do we expect them to carry on the legacy? In conclusion, Prof. Abiodun Salami once said, language is not just words, it is our culture, it is our tradition, it is the unifying force that binds us all together as one, end of quote. Preserving the Nigerian language is not just about keeping words alive, it's about preparing the future for the upcoming generation. Adetunji Adekola was a Yoruba boy who was caught in the depths of kidnappers a few years ago. They were all kept in the LO and waited for the fate. Then a day, some people came and wanted to buy body parts for morning ritual. Then one of them was a proficient Yoruba speaker who could speak Yoruba very well. Adekola, seeing these, used this to his advantage and told the man of his trivances. He told him to help him and sought help. The man had pity and compassion on him and told him he was going to come back. After a few weeks, the man came back and decided to help him, but Adekola was only a few steps away from the door of death. He was able to rescue him and return him to his parents who were already agitated. Panelists, what do you think would have happened to Adekola if he could not speak Yoruba? What do you think would have happened to him if his parents had refused to teach him Yoruba? What do you think would have happened if he was not enrolled in the school that teaches Yoruba? We have to remember as I leave the stage that language is the mirror of our culture. Language is the mirror of who we are and who we are going to be. Language is the mirror of where we're coming from and where we're going to. We have to know that without language, we are nothing but empty vessels. Proud to propose, thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, the second supporting speaker of side opposition. I call on the second supporting speaker of side opposition to conclude the argument.
Good day, House. My opponent here came in and started quoting names of people, Yoruba people, and people from the 3 major languages. But the question is are those the only indigenous language? Why don't you cite example of other people, of other tribes and native languages and native cultures? Without now, down to the reason why I'm here. Without language, would there be culture? Standing before you, the second supporting speaker negating, and I remind you, and both are credence, rightly said by my first speaker. Now, we have a critical case here, the threatening extinction of our indigenous languages. But we can see on a daily basis that the Nigerian educational system keep lack of the promotion of our indigenous languages. So how will our indigenous languages stand? And this can cause severe consequences, which most of us undermine till today. Firstly, the language laws. I'm not saying that the educational system don't promote language. Yes, they do. But they promote the three major languages, that is Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba. Are those the only indigenous language? I'm not saying that they should start promoting all. No, but they can start from somewhere. They can start from somewhere. Our language. So if they promote Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba, let's take for example someone like me. I don't speak Igbo, I don't speak Hausa, I don't speak Yoruba. What will happen to my language? What will happen to my culture? What will happen to my identity? Now, loss of cultural identity. Like I said earlier, our culture is our identity. So when they keep promoting these three major languages, what about the rest? What about the rest? Yes, the rest, the other ones will keep demoting, and they'll go into extinction. Yes, they will, because they are not being promoted by the Nigerian educational system. How would the Nigerian educational system promote another man's language, English language, that is a foreign language, it is not our own, and sideline our own African language? We have a culture. African have a culture, which is our identity. 3, reduce cognitive ability. Firstly, what is cognitive? It's a mental process for, I'll get back to you. It's a mental process for us to think, access information, digest information, and bring in solutions. So the cognitive ability of the student will lack their mother tongue. Yes, it will. Why? Because the educational system have put them in a particular system where English language is the official language and other language cannot be used. So when they are analyzing information, they won't analyze it in their language for better understanding, but in another language that they don't understand. Now, social disintegration. It is the process where the social fragmentation of social interactions between people. If your language is lost, what will happen to you? I may not know about your opinion, but I know about mine. I will not be happy. I will be disheartened, and I can't stand for my language to be lost and to go into extinction. So what am I trying to say? I said I'll get back to you. What am I trying to say? That the educational system should put in strategies, policies, and structures so that our language will be promoted and our language will stand. Why don't the educational system conduct language survey and documentation? They go into cities, go into communities, bring people that are eligible to teach these languages in schools. They document our languages. Yes, we may claim that most languages are documented. Let's look at the Ufian language spoken by Benue State. Let's look at the Leala language spoken by Cross River. Let's look at the Koro language spoken by Niger State. Current day news have it that this language are endangered. Why? Because they are not properly documented. Why don't the educational system develop language educational framework? Yes, these people in these rural villages may not be able to come to the cities to teach. Why? Because of lack of funds. So the educational system can play a role in providing transportation funds to help these people to come, put them on that maybe 1 to 2 weeks training to teach them the curriculum scheme, how to teach the student and when to teach the student. Why don't the educational system create indigenous language material, not just giving money to produce English language textbook, literature text? What about other languages? Yes, you may see textbooks of the 3 major languages, but what about the rest? Should other languages be sidelined because of the 3 major languages? Why don't the educational system implement mother tongue education pilot projects? Like my chief supporting speaker said here, that 2 heads are better than 1. Collaboration and togetherness can make the work. I know that there are a lot of languages, rightly said here by my opponent, there are a lot of languages, but the educational system are not even making enough effort. They should try to promote these languages. At least it will take so many processes, so many strings to be attached and detached, but they can start something. Later on, we can get there. Why do you think students that enter kindergarten for 1 year, they are always confused? They are confused because they are trained, they are brought up in societies and communities where they grow up hearing indigenous language here and there, but they come into a system that says that indigenous language is prohibited. And when they listen to this English language, They are not able to understand. They are not able to assimilate. It causes what? Confusion. So the educators should address this before it gets more serious. May I have your PY?
Now you mentioned that the national educational system needs to complement policies. Are these policies not implemented before?
Sorry, come again.
You said the national educational system, they need to implement policies. I told you about the national policies on education. Are these policies not implemented before?
Yes, most of these policies are
You
implemented.
also talked
but
about...
they are not working. They are not working. Yes, because why? There are so many languages. So most of these policies that they are implementing are for the 3 major languages. I'm asking, what about the rest? What about the rest?
Okay.
So
now,
should they be sidelined? Should they be sidelined? So when my time is born, you have to drop your questions first. So what am I trying to say? The educational system are slowly killing our languages. Adjudicators, my distinguished audience, I myself, my opponents here, and my friends in argument, we don't want our language to go into extinction. So when our language goes into extinction, our culture and our identity is lost. Why? Because our culture is our identity, is our way of life. So when our language has gone into extinction, what will happen to us? Social isolation. We can't interact with people. We can't interact with our community, with our society. Why? Because our language has gone into extinction. We are like people without social backing. We are like naked people, open and vulnerable to the dangers of the world. So you all can see with me that if this educational system don't implement these policies, these strategies, and these structures, how? How will our language not go into extinction? If they don't take these policies into hand, if they don't put implementation on ground, because we can see that most of the structures that were implemented by our forefathers in the days to promote our culture, when they died, yes, it died with them. The culture eroded with them. Our cultures are lost. Languages are going extinct because of the educational system is promoting another man's culture. The English language is another man's culture, for goodness sake. So adjudicators, my audience, my friends in argument, you all can see with me that as far as the educational system don't do this, our language are vulnerable to extinction. And with this, I and my team conclude that the educational system are to be blamed for the threatening extinction of our indigenous language, our African culture, our identity. This motion must stand. Thank you.
That was superb. Kudos to you, the second supporting speaker of side opposition. It is my pleasure to call on the lead speaker of side proposition to give his reply. Side opposition, sorry, to give her reply speech.
Once again, I remain the lead speaker of the side opposition, and I'm meant to summarize what I and my team have already laid emphasis on. Taking a quick look at overemphasis on English. English language is now used for assessing tests, examinations, and evaluations, thereby marginalizing and neglecting our indigenous languages, which could lead to decline in these languages among our younger generations. How about limiting educational researches? These resources are very scarce to promote the use of our languages in the educational system. Now, our schools do not even want to listen to our indigenous languages when they are being spoken. They even make it prohibited, because to them they feel that it's a complete waste of time and resources. So they do not even want to encourage the buying of these textbooks on other indigenous languages aside from the Wazobia, that is the Igbo, the Hausa, and Yoruba. Now, are you aware that a lot of countries are still keeping their languages aside? They are still keeping their languages promoted, their cultural heritage preserved, despite the fact that they have been colonized? What about the Americans, the African continent, the Asia continent, the Ethiopia, the Bolivia, and other countries, to mention but a few? Are these countries not colonized? So why is it that we Nigerians are embracing other people's culture? Why can't we embrace our own culture? Why can't we promote our cultural heritage? Why can't we promote our language and preserve our cultural heritage? What about inadequate language policies? Now, this refers to the absence of official guidelines that governs the use of these languages. This means that the guidelines are supposed to be used to guide this language are not there. The policies are not there. My opponent may say that a lot of languages have been documented, but are you aware that those languages you think are documented are not fully documented? Even the languages that are spoken by over 20,000 people are not being documented. What about the Okoroton in Cross River State? Is that language documented? What about the Ufia language in Benue State? Those languages have been endangered. What about the Yala language spoken in Cross River State by about 3,000 people? Now imagine a scenario where about 2,500 people should leave the country, leaving only 300 people. Don't you think that this language will go into extinction? What about the Ufia language spoken in Benue State by 5,000 people? Don't you think that if these people should live for the urban areas, this language will go into extinction? A lot of languages are at the risk of extinction. Please, we are Nigerians. We are united. God made us one people. We are one family. Let us come together. Let us embrace our culture. Let us come together, preserve our cultural heritage. Let us come together to promote our language and stop using another man's language. Let us come together to prevent the extinction of our languages. Let us come together to build a solid foundation for our language to stand firm. We should stop using people's languages. We should stop using a borrowed language. I'm not saying that the English language has caused havoc. No. All I'm saying is that it is replacing gradually our English languages as this makes our language go into extinction. Now, there are possible solutions that educational systems can take, such as encouraging language survey and documentation, funding program on our indigenous language. It is not only about giving money to go and do a lot of things. It is also about making these people able, giving teachers the necessary training they require to be able to teach this subject. Now, in conclusion, I and my team have discussed on more than 10 points, giving you reasons, 4 consequences, and 5 solutions, giving you the reasons why the Nigerian educational system should be blamed, should be held accountable for the threatened extinction of our indigenous languages. Thank you.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, the lead speaker, for your reply speech. Now I call on the lead speaker of side proposition to give his reply speech.
It seems that the speakers from the team opposition did not listen attentively when my chief speaker was listing the policies that the Nigerian educational system have put in place to ensure the preservation of all our indigenous languages. Also, they talked about us supporting them. So I think they don't have enough context on this topic. We are saying that the parents and not the Nigerian educational system are responsible for the threatened extinction of Nigerian languages. So normally, we are saying that the Nigerian educational system have put in place adequate measures to preserve and support the indigenous languages. Furthermore, they mentioned that these policies that have been implemented only cater for the 3 major languages. But you said in your speech that these languages are alike. So, are you not contradicting yourself? Moreover, they said that there is no adequate documentation of all these languages. Can you give us statistical evidence that there is no adequate documentation? Over 250 Nigerian languages have been adequately documented, and the documentation is not stopping. It's still continuing. So, what is your evidence? Standing before you is Badegashi Daniela, the return speaker from the team proposition. What have we, the team proposition, been able to bring to you today? We have been able to tell you the factors responsible for the threatened extinction of Nigerian languages mentioned by my chief speaker as globalization and English dominance, the role of technology and media, decline of multi-generational language transmission, and economic and social stigma. We've also been able to show you how the Nigerian educational system has contributed positively to the preservation and conservation of our indigenous languages by the National Policy on Education, language training in schools, linguistic research and documentation, and community and cultural programs. We've also been able to show you how the parents are responsible and to be held accountable for the threatened extinction of Nigerian languages through the abnormal embrace of globalization and urbanization, also the misconception of the importance of migration and cultural assimilation by parents, and we've also been able to show you that parents bow to social pressure. Moreover, parents tending to engage themselves in cultural shifts, and we were able to give you the effects such as weakening of community ties, impaired cognitive development, and disconnection from our cultural heritage. But in order not to leave our speech hanging, we gave you the ways by which the parents can check the threatened extinction of Nigerian languages, which include, first, implementation of language education programs Also, enhancement of adequate parent-child language learning activities. Furthermore, parents should hold their languages in high esteem. Also, parents should show the children the beauty and importance of their indigenous language. Moreover, adoption of Bloom taxonomy in language acquisition. We raised 5 POIs. 3 of those POIs were shallowly answered, while 2 of those POIs were not answered. The team opposition raised 3 POIs, which we were able to answer to their satisfaction. Without much argument from the team opposition, it means that they conceded to the fact that the parents and not the Nigerian educational system are to be blamed for the threatening extinction of Nigerian languages. And with this, I say, proud to propose, thank you.
Thank you very much to our able debaters. And bringing us to the end of the quarterfinal, the judges would pass their judgment for the debate.
Hello, viewers. Once again, we bring to you the last debate of the day between Team OYO and Team Cross River. Having watched the debate, we want to commend the first 2 speakers from the 2 states. They were good, fluent, articulate, coordinated. The way I have problem, or we have problem based on the result, the first and second supporting speakers were generally speaking on how to preserve Nigerian languages without pinpointing what the parents should do or what the government should do. I'm a language expert. I heard it. Talking, but I commend the first 2 speakers. And to crown it all, the reply speech. Because if you look at the scores, they were too close. The reply speech of one of the states gave them an edge. They rebutted some of the questions, the POI well attended, but what gave them the edge was the reply speech. Like the previous thing we did. We have said it, your reply speech matters a lot. How do you counter what the opponent has said? Pick them one by one and start knocking them. They are not giving us fresh argument. We are not entertaining it. And that was the team that won this evening. That was what they did. And that was what I told him the previous debate. So here we have unanimous decision to show you that we worked independently, and what Judge S saw was what Judge B saw. So we are not biased. We are giving you the unanimous decision went to Team OYO State. Thank you very much.